Starting off at number 10, we have Alakazam EX. This Stage 2 Pokemon has 2 attacks, one of which is much stranger than the other. For 2 colorless energy, Mind Jack deals 90 damage plus 30 more for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. For 2 psychic energy, Dimensional Hand deals 120 damage and has the unique effect of being usable from your bench. This Pokemon is one of the only in the TCG's history that can attack without being in the active spot. Dimensional Hand's unique attack effect causes decks built around Alakazam EX to look almost like a control deck. Control decks often play Pokemon with disruptive or defensive abilities to help slow down the pace of the game and to prevent your opponent from taking any prize cards. Because Alakazam can attack from the bench, an Alakazam player can put Pokemon such as Klefki, Iron Thrones EX, or Mimikyu in the active spot to disrupt your opponent while dealing damage with Dimensional Hand. If you want to increase damage output, you could leave Petrarant in the active spot. Combined with Brute Bonnet to poison the defending Pokemon and Radiant Sneasler, you could deal an additional 80 damage between turns while your attacker remains safe on your bench. Even with this completely unique effect and upside, Alakazam EX has seen very little competitive success. The main reason is the deck being outclassed by actual control decks. When both decks already play the same lock pieces, why include Alakazam when you can play a more resilient control deck that wins without attacking? Alakazam may not be in the active spot, but it can still be targeted down by boss's orders for a KO. The other issue with this Pokemon is Dimension Hand's very low damage output. 120 damage for 2 energy is a very poor rate, and will take 3 attacks to KO any meta-relevant Pokemon. Ironically, Mind Jack is oftentimes a superior attack, dealing upwards of 240 damage if your opponent has 5 bench Pokemon, or 330 damage if they have a bench of 8 with Area 0 Underdepths in play. The Pokemon may not be great right now, but Dimension Hand's unique effect gives Alakazam EX potential if the right cards pair alongside it are ever printed. And at number 9, we have Dream Ball. This item's powerful effect is restricted by its very unique activation timing. When you play this item, you can search your deck for any Pokemon and put it directly onto your bench. However, it can only be used when drawn from your prize cards. Only one other item card in the game, called Greedy Dice, has the same strange restriction, but has its own effect also limited by a coin toss succeeding. What stands out about Dream Ball is the upside of putting any Pokemon from your deck onto the bench. Very few cards in the TCG's history have ever let players put a Pokemon, regardless of its stage, onto their bench, and usually that Pokemon isn't coming straight from the deck. Having this effect go off wasn't completely reliant on Dream Ball being in your starting 6 prize cards either, as there existed some cards in the standard format which manipulated your prize cards. Peonia lets you put up to 3 of your prize cards into your hand and then return that many cards from your hand to your prize cards. If you have a Dream Ball in your hand, you can play the supporter card to put it into your prize cards. After you use Peonia, you can then take your next KO, you'll know which prize card is the Dream Ball, and you'll be able to use its effect. So, what is the best Pokemon you can play this combo? The reason this item is at the beginning of this list is because there weren't any standout Pokemon to cheat out. If you're playing a Stage 2 evolution deck like Decidueye, you could use Dream Ball to skip having to go through your various evolution stages, but setting up wasn't a problem the deck had or needed to fix. For decks not built around Stage 2 Pokemon, there were really only 2 utility Pokemon ever worth looking at, Inteleon and Dusknoir. These 2 Pokemon have excellent abilities, but were limited in their usage by being Stage 2. Once per turn, Inteleon's Quick Shooting puts 2 damage counters on an opponent's Pokemon, and Dusknoir's Spectral Breach ability causes all special energy attached to opponent's Pokemon to provide only 1 colorless energy and no other effects. Quick Shooting could be the difference between getting a KO or not, and Spectral Breach could prevent an opponent from attaching if their deck was too reliant on special energy. Make no mistake though, Dream Ball was a gimmick, but it did see very occasional experimentation, earning it the number 9 spot on this list. And at number 8, we have Klefki. This Pokemon's Wonderlock ability allows it to attach itself to one of your Pokemon as a tool card until the end of your opponent's turn. While attached, Klefki prevents all damage dealt to the attached Pokemon by opposing Mega Pokemon. The effect of attaching a Pokemon to another as a tool card wasn't completely unheard of when this card was released, with many unknowns having this effect, but it hadn't been printed in a long while. Klefki both had great synergy with other cards in the standard format, and had a legitimately good effect. During the time this card was released, Mega Pokemon were at the forefront of the metagame, with both Mega Mewtwo and Rayquaza EX being top tier decks. These 2 decks wouldn't be able to damage any Pokemon Klefki was attached to, so the Pokemon turned tool card was legitimately valuable, despite the fact protection lasted only a single turn. Many strategies had better ways to deal with the fast Mega Pokemon though, and so Klefki's usage was limited to decks which had specific synergies with the card. In Standard, this meant pairing alongside Vespiquen. For 2 colorless energy, Be Revenge dealt 20 damage, plus 10 more for each Pokemon in your discard pile. Klefki was an amazing inclusion in this deck, providing both a damage prevention tool card against certain matchups, and a flat 10 damage boost to Be Revenge by discarding it against non-Mega decks. What's interesting about this Pokemon card is that its peak of competitive viability didn't actually come all in the standard format. In the expanded format, Klefki was a key component of Zoroark Garbodor decks. This deck both leveraged the card advantage and early power provided by Zoroark GX's trade ability and Riot's beating attack, but could use Garbodor's Garbotoxin against decks which were wholly reliant on abilities like Mewtwo and Mew. In a Zoroark Garbodor mirror match, Klefki provided something special to swing the game in one player's favor. It was a temporary tool card. Garbodor's Garbotoxin only applies while a tool card is attached to it, and so you can use as many abilities as you want on your turn before using Klefki's Wonderlock on your Garbodor to prevent their abilities. Then, at the end of your opponent's turn, Wonderlock would discard Klefki, meaning Garbodor has no tool card, allowing you to use your own abilities again during your turn. Turning Garbotoxin into a functionally one-sided ability lock allows you to bury your opponent in card advantage with trade while they can't use their own, something Hexmaniac got banned from the expanded format for enabling. This Pokemon also had a second short-lived use in the expanded format, which we'll discuss with this next card. And at number 7, we have Unown. While in the active spot, and there are 66 total damage counters amongst the Pokemon on your bench, you can use this card's damage ability. If you do, you win the game. Very rarely are alternate win conditions printed in the Pokemon TCG, and when they are released, they're convoluted like this one. In the standard format, this card was completely useless and very terrible, unlike in the expanded format. In expanded, Unown damage was the win condition for one of the Pokemon TCG's few combo decks. In other trading card games like Magic the Gathering, decks that are built around assembling card combinations that win the game on the spot are more commonplace and an accepted part of the game. The Pokemon TCG is not designed in a way that supports a combination of cards winning the game, because your opponent can't interact with your cards during your turn. Unown damage is a win condition that doesn't interact with the opponent whatsoever. Here's how the damage loop works. Have 2 Magikarp and Wailord GX, 1 Ranunculus, and 1 Weavile, and the Team Magma's secret base in play. Play Klefki from your hand, causing Team Magma's secret base to put 2 damage counters on it. Use Ranunculus's damage swap ability to move 2 counters onto one of your Magikarp and Wailord GX, or if you have 29 damage counters on them, put the counters onto any other card. Use Klefki's Wonderlock to attach it to any of your Pokemon. Use Weavile's Tear Away ability to put Klefki attached to your Pokemon back into your hand. Repeat this process until you have 66 damage counters amongst your Pokemon. Lastly, use damage to win the game. With a Pokemon TCG's many great consistency options, despite its many different required cards, the damage loop was actually pretty easy to set up, and could theoretically be done by the players in the second turn. It could be disrupted many different ways, either by knocking out the evolving stages of Ranunculus or Weavile, or with ability locks from Garbotoxin, but playing against Unown damage combos was never a fun experience, and so Unown got banned in the expanded format. And at number 6, we have Dusknoir Lv.X. Don't let this card's very lengthy Pokemon power fool you. It's not as complicated as it seems. Essentially, when this Pokemon is knocked out, the Ectoplasma Pokepower makes it become a Stadium card. While Dusknoir Lv.X is a Stadium, it puts 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon between turns. Also, if it would ever be discarded, it instead returns to your hand. For those unaware, a Lv.X Pokemon retains all the attacks and effects of the stage under it. So this Pokemon would have actual attacks to use while in play, not as a Stadium. This card's Stadium effect is extremely powerful, and quickly racks up damage across your opponent's entire board if left unchecked, and serves a unique build-around for Dusknoir strategies in the 2009 to the 2010 standard formats. During this time period, Dusknoir was a Pokemon somewhat famous for having many different versions, each with unique and powerful utility. Shadow Command Dusknoir draws 2 cards every turn with its Pokepower, and can use its damage even attack to target down low HP bench Pokemon. It could even become damage immune against Pokemon with 2 or less energies attached to them by using its Night Spin attack. Dark Palm Dusknoir can use its Pokepower to punish any opponent who benches more than 4 Pokemon by shuffling back into the deck any Pokemon of your choice. Lastly, Spirit Pulse Dusknoir could use its Pokebody to put a damage counter on all of your opponent's Pokemon with energy attached to them between turns. When combined with Dusknoir Lv.X, a Dusknoir player could spread ridiculous damage between every turn, and even take multiple KOs between turns. Dusknoir Lv.X's presence also lingered over the game, even if your opponent somehow removed it, because it added itself back to the hand to be used again. This card's strange effect combined wonderfully with all the other Dusknoir's great utility and attacks to form a very tricky strategy for opponents to disrupt. And at number 5, we have Victini. Once per turn, whenever you flip coins for an attack effect, the Victory Star ability lets you ignore that result and reflip the coins. Victini was used whenever a player tried to abuse a powerful effect lock behind a coin toss, as it greatly improves the odds of any single flip being a heads. As an example, if you need one coin toss to be heads, normally you'd lose half the time. With Victory Star, you now have to lose 2 coin flips in a row in order to lose the flip. Generally, effects which rely on coin flips aren't competitively viable in the modern Pokemon TCG, and this was still true around the time Victini released. When this card first entered the standard format, Into the metagame came with a bunch of coin flip cards and strategies built specifically to abuse them. The most notable of these was Mew Prime. This deck sought to put Stage 2 Pokemon like Vanilluxe or Unfezant into the Lost Zone with either its See-Off attack or Relicanth's Prehistoric Wisdom. Once in the Lost Zone, Mew could use their attacks thanks to its Lost Link Pokebody. For 1 water and 1 colorless energy, Vanilluxe's Double Freeze attack flipped 2 coins and dealt 40 damage for each heads, and then paralyze a defending Pokemon if you got at least 1 heads. For 2 colorless energy, Unfezant's Fly attack dealt 50 damage and made the Pokemon that used it immune to damage during your opponent's next turn if you won a coin toss. With item lock provided by Vileplume, Mew, and its paralysis spam or damage immunity, you could easily win the game. With the Victini in play, this very frustrating strategy was unlikely to whiff on any of its important coin tosses. Some variants of this strategy didn't even play Mew, and simply set up Vanilluxe in the field backed by a Vileplume and Victory Star. Victini was also a staple in Donk strategies, an archetype that didn't exist in the modern TCG. You see, there were no restrictions placed upon the player going first during the black and white era of the TCG, meaning they could attack, play items, supporters, etc. with no downside. Donk decks capitalized on this by playing Pokemon which could deal the most damage on the very first turn, hoping to win by knocking out the defending Pokemon before their opponent has any opportunity to put any more cards onto their bench. The best Donk Pokemon at the time, Hitmontop, could deal 60 damage for a single energy if you flip enough heads, something Victini made much more easier. This deck was never truly meta, but playing against it was often frustrating because you may just lose before you ever got a chance to play. Frustration is a key theme with Victini decks, as its other most notable partner was Sharpedo. For 1 Darkness Energy, Strip Bear deals 20 damage and flips 2 coins. If you win both flips, your opponent's entire hand is discarded. This entire deck was built around eventually winning the Strip Bear coin flips, at which point Slowking's second Sight Pokepower could stack your opponent's deck so they couldn't draw any good cards for the rest of the game. As you can see, sitting across from a Victini deck was never really a fun time. Victory Star has only ever been printed as an ability 1 other time for very good reasons, and the game designers made sure there weren't any broken effects to abuse with it that time around. And at number 4, we have Zoroark. This Pokemon's Phantom Transformation ability lets you put any Stage 1 card from your discard pile onto your bench at the cost of discarding itself. While this card was legal in the standard format, it enabled a unique strategy built around various Stage 1 Pokemon with different attacks that each covered various matchups. Initially, on first release, this deck used cards like Chinchino to discard Stage 1 Pokemon while accumulating cards in hand. These cards generally had cheap or flexible attack costs, which helped streamline the deck by not requiring too many energy types. The best Stage 1s were cards which had attacks that could be powered up by just a Twin Energy or Capture Energy. Flapple, Appletun, and Slowbro were staples in the deck for their low cost, high power, but situational attacks that could always be leveraged at the right time thanks to Phantom Transformation. About a year and a half after its initial release, this deck received a huge boon with the release of Reversal Energy. This card provides a non-rulebox evolution Pokemon with 3 energy of any type as long as the opponent has less prize cards remaining than you. Suddenly, the amount of Stage 1 Pokemon that were easily usable expanded to anything with a 3 energy attack cost. The best fits were Pokemon that could attack common weaknesses in the format. Scovillain's Super Spicy Breath attack dealt 180 damage when powered by Reversal Energy, and one-hit KO Charizard EX. Jolteon's Fighting Lightning similarly knocked out opposing Pidgeot EX. Kleavor threatened Miraidon EX decks, while options like Setatan and Camerupt provided large damage independent of hitting for weaknesses. These Phantom Transformation decks were never top tier, and was mainly a rogue strategy that popped up in tournament results every once in a while, but it wasn't a deck one could completely count out. This unique strategy existed entirely off the back of Zoroark's weird effect, and so the card earned this number 4 spot. And at number 3, we have Brock's Ninetales. This card's Pokemon power is pretty similar to Phantom Transformation, but it has some very important distinctions. Once per turn, Shapeshift lets you put any evolution card from your hand onto this card, but it can't evolve, devolve, or use its Pokemon powers. Also, you could discard that evolution Pokemon from Brock's Ninetales during your turn if you wanted to switch out the Pokemon you're using Shapeshift for. This card's niche in the competitive metagame was based entirely around the trainer card Brock's Protection. This card attached itself to one of your Brock's Pokemon and prevented all energy attached to that Pokemon from being removed. In formats dominated by energy removal and super energy removal, Pokemon with high attack costs were entirely unviable. Brock's Protection provided a rare way to circumvent these disruptive trainer cards, and Brock's Ninetales extended that energy protection to any evolution card in the game. Equipping Brock's Ninetales with Brock's Protection means that any Pokemon you shapeshift into will also become immune to energy removal. Initially, the best partner for Ninetales was Misty's Gyarados. For 4 water energy, Tidal Wave deals 70 damage. 70 damage for 4 energy was an above average rate at the time, but the card was unplayable due to a barrage of energy removal and its downside Pokemon power. Every time this Pokemon attacks, Rebellion makes you flip 2 coins. If both are tails, you'd have to shuffle Misty's Gyarados and all cards attached to it back into the deck. If you tried to play this Pokemon without Brock's Ninetales, you'd not only lose to energy disruption, but also its own effect. Thankfully, Ninetales prevents the effect of Rebellion since you can't use Pokemon powers. With the release of the Neo set, Brock's Ninetales decks in the base Neo format gained 2 excellent other attackers, Tyranitar and Steelix. Both of these Pokemon have extremely high attack costs and are reliant on special energy cards. Since players can only use a maximum of 4 copies of any special energy in their deck, these cards were reliant on ways to preserve them, something Ninetales helped with excellently. If uninterrupted, a fully powered Steelix could become unkillable with each metal energy attached to it, reducing all damage it takes by 10. Tyranitar's trample attack dealt massive damage to the defending Pokemon, especially when boosted by 10 for each darkness energy, while spreading damage across your opponent's bench. Brock's Ninetales Shapeshift provides a unique way for these high-powered, high-cost cards to thrive in a metagame that would otherwise be extremely hostile towards them. And at number 2, we have Arceus Lv.X. The second level X Pokemon on this list also has no attacks on its own. The multi-type Pokebody grants this card the same type as the Arceus beneath it, and the omniscient Pokebody allows it to use the attacks of any Arceus on the field. What really makes this card stand out amongst the Pokemon TCG's history is its unique rule box. Arceus has a special rule that allows you to play any number of cards named Arceus in your deck list. Every single Arceus card from the Diamond and Pearl era of the TCG has this same effect, allowing you to combine them to form a deck of all Arceus. Arceus decks were built around leveraging the unique rule in combination with the archetype's many different support cards. The most important card for the strategy was Ripple Swell Arceus. For 0 energy, if you have 6 different Arceus in play, this Pokemon's Ripple Swell attack lets you attach 1 basic energy from your deck to each of your Arceus in play. This attack's ridiculous energy acceleration combines excellently with the Stadium card Ultimate Zone. This card lets your player move as many energy cards from their bench Pokemon to their active Arceus as they want. With a combination of Ultimate Zone and Ripple Swell, you'll have enough energy in play to retreat into the best Arceus for any moment and use any Arceus' attack. The Arceus you'd want to attack with most frequently are Ripple Swell Arceus, Dark-type Arceus, and Fire-type Arceus. For 3 colorless energy, Sky Spear deals 80 damage to an opponent's Pokemon of your choice, but puts all energy attached to Arceus into the Lost Zone. This attack was an excellent option to attack low HP utility Pokemon like Claydol and Uxie, and could be used in succession thanks to Ultimate Zone refueling energy to your active Pokemon. For 1 darkness and 1 colorless energy, Dark-type Arceus' prize count dealt 20 damage plus 60 more if your opponent had less prizes remaining than you, dealing excellent damage for no downside and low cost if you're behind. For 1 fire and 2 colorless energy, Fire-type Arceus' Bright Flame deals 80 damage. But you have to discard 2 energies attached to Arceus if you lose a coin flip, a downside easily mitigated by double colorless energy. If for whatever reason you want to use Bright Flame or Prize Count, but don't want to attack with a Fire or Dark type, you can level up a differently typed Arceus into Arceus Lv.X, to use any of Arceus' attacks with the best possible type for each matchup, allowing the deck to hit any opponent's Pokemon for its weakness. Arceus is one of the most unique decks in the Pokemon TCG's history, all thanks to their wholly unique deck building effect. And lastly, rounding out the list at number 1, we have Ditto Prism Star. This card's almighty evolution ability allows you to evolve into any Stage 1 Pokemon by using Ditto instead of its usual basic. This effect is simple but wholly unique to this Pokemon, and allowed players to use cards that may otherwise be difficult to play. A bent Ditto Prism Star can represent any Stage 1 Pokemon in the game, giving players using evolution strategies increased flexibility in playing multiple different evolution lines within the same deck. The card was easy to slot into these decks, with there being little to no downside for searching out Ditto instead of the proper basic Pokemon on the first turn, especially if you could search multiple basic Pokemon at the same time. For example, if you play Professor Elm's Lecture in a Zoroark deck to search 3 basic Pokemon with 100 HP or less, you could search Zorua, any important evolving basic like Rockruff or Unown Lv.X, and Ditto. This combination represents a Zoroark GX, Lycanroc, or Ninetales GX respectively, and any other Stage 1 Pokemon in the game through Almighty Evolution. This combination is especially useful because it prevents an opponent from cutting you off any particular Stage 1 Pokemon, because Ditto represents all of them. If for whatever reason you search 2 Zorua and 1 Unown Lv.X, an opponent's Guzma could target down your Vulpix and prevent you from accessing Alola Ninetales GX's powerful Mysterious Guidance ability. With Ditto in play, your opponent needs to knock out multiple Pokemon at the same time to meaningfully prevent an evolution into a needed Stage 1 Pokemon. Ditto being an auto-include in decks using many Stage 1 Pokemon also opened up players to include many utility Pokemon that may otherwise be difficult to justify using in a deck because their basic Pokemon takes up space as well. Unown Muck is a Pokemon which is only useful against basic decks with lots of abilities, which makes playing both it and Unown Grimer a slight risk because these two cards may be useless depending on what you're playing against. Almighty Evolution lets you play Muck without the Grimer, allowing its space to be taken by an overall better card while still granting you access to Unown Muck in matchups where it's powerful. Cinccino control decks especially loved using Ditto for this purpose, as they needed to fit as many answers to common strategies as possible within deck lists and allow for many disruptive Stage 1 Pokemon to fit into deck lists as well. Ditto could represent any number of cards, like Persian to punish opponents building up large hand sizes, Delcatty to add supporters from the discard to your hand, or Magcargo GX for late game mill when your opponent is low on cards in the deck. Ditto was a staple in many competitive archetypes for its entire time in the standard format, off the back of its wholly unique ability, easily earning the number 1 spot on this list. And that's it for the video. If you want a top 10 worst cards, weird or unique effects, because there's plenty of bad ones, let us know down in the comments below.